there, welcome back to my hot kitchen. I'm Wendy, and we have a delicious hearty feast for your next romantic date night at home. We're going to be having mushroom and barley soup, steak and Jack Daniel's sauce served with broccoli-cheddar baked potatoes, and butternut squash. So let's get that soup started first. So over here in a saucepan, you're going to want to saute together a little bit of onion, celery, and garlic. You're going to want to do that in a little bit of olive oil. And I have about 1 to 2 tablespoons each of the celery, carrots, and onions, all minced very fine, because this is kind of a quick soup. And when you're making a quick soup, you want the mirepoix, the carrots, celery, and onions, to be kind of fine. Saute those for a moment, just until you start to see the onions and celery turn a little bit translucent. Well, this mirepoix is looking nice and happy. It's taken on a bit of a brown tone, which is just fine with this type of soup. So I'm going to add to that about 1 ounce of cream sherry. It's just going to add a little sweetness and complexity to the soup. And about 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon for a fun spice. Wow, that smells amazing. Now we're going to add a 1/2 cup of barley. This is pearl barley. It's a fantastic whole grain to work with. I'm just going to give it a moment to soak up the flavors here that we just added into the pot. And then it's time to add the stock. Now when I do stocks, I start with my own homemade beef glaze. And this is basically a stock that I made and reduced the schnot out of. I reduced it to about, 10% of its original volume. And then I freeze it. And I use it as needed, reconstituting with about 1 cube that I froze in an ice tray with a cup of water. So that was basically 2 cubes that I'm reconstituting with about 2.5 cups water. There's a link on the website, hotkitchenonline.com, under blogs called On Stock Cookery, that sort of details out how I like to make stocks and how I like to preserve them. It's a great way for small batch scratch cooking from home. One last ingredient, a bay leaf. You want to put that into the soup. Then it's time to bring the soup up to a boil and drop it down to a simmer. You'll want to let it cook for 35 to 45 minutes, or just enough time to allow that barley to become tender. And now it's time to talk about the steak. So I'm making this dinner with a flat iron steak, which is a nice cut off the shoulder. And it's very tender, very delicious, very flavorful. So I'm going to start by giving it a nice dose of fresh ground pepper. I want to get a nice encrusting going on here. Flat iron steak, like mini steaks, is delicious with a lot of pepper on it. Next thing to do, press this pepper on there. And drizzle a little bit of the balsamic vinegar on there. I'm going to use about 1 ounce all in all. I'm going to poke a bunch of holes in it. I'm also going to sprinkle on some basil and a little bit of chopped garlic. Pressing those in to make sure the spices and flavors penetrate deeply into the meat. And then we're going to flip it over and repeat on the other side. A little more sprinkling, a little more garlic. Gotta love a garlic on the steak, you know? And pepper. Pour a bit more of the delicious balsamic vinegar over it and poke the heck out of it. Just helps to ensure a nice tender flavor. The vinegar aids in tenderizing the meat. Not that it really needs it, but hey, you can always use a little bit more tender beef. Flip it again just to make sure it's all good and properly loved up. And then we're going to put this guy in the fridge. And the steaks can just chillax there for a little bit until we're ready to cook them off. And with that out of the way, it's time to think about the baked potatoes. Now, baked potatoes, of course, are super easy to make. I favor seasoning up the skins a little bit, so they're extra yummy. So I scrub these guys really well. And then again, I'm gonna poke several holes in them. That way they cook evenly and they get their little ventilation on. Then you want to drizzle a little olive oil or some sort of cooking oil over the top, just a little tiny bit, a little salt and pepper, or whatever sort of seasonings you'd like to try out on the skin of your potato. And just want to rub them tenderly and lovingly, thinking of your sweetie and the amazing dinner that you're going to have together. Wrap them up nice and tight. And you'll want to have your oven preheated to at least 400 degrees, especially if you're working with big potatoes. They're going to take at least an hour to cook. Stab another little hole in the top. And then to the oven with these little guys. And now let's prepare the roasted butternut squash. So I have a little bit of butternut squash, basically just the neck of it actually, because I used the other part in a soup earlier this week. And we're gonna keep this really simple because there's a lot of complexity with the sauces and the soups and whatnot. So just drizzle a little olive oil and about a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar, about equal parts of each. A little bit of basil, 1 teaspoon to a tablespoon, depending on how much basil you like. Salt and pepper. And what you want to do at this point is just prepare these for baking. If you put them in right now, they're going to be overdone and they're going to finish before the potatoes. So plan to add these to the oven when you sit down and enjoy the soup course. In the meantime, they'll be happy just to sit here and chillax and soak up the flavors. Soup's been simmering for a few minutes now, so let's take a little look at it and see how it's coming along. Ooh, that is amazing. You can just smell the rich aromas of the barley and the mirepoix and the cinnamon and the bay leaf all working together to create a magical, yummy little first course. All right, and at this point, I'm just waiting on the soup to finish. Let's take a look now at the soup. It's been simmering for about 40 minutes. And you can see that the barley has done a great job of soaking up most all of the liquid I added in the first round. So I'm gonna go ahead and add about another cup of water. And the mushrooms, I have 5 large cremini mushrooms. So you wanna use 5 large or 10 small or some sort of nice combination like that. You'll note that they're cut in a very large form. And what you want to do is then just simmer these guys with about a tablespoon of soy sauce for about 5 minutes or until the mushrooms become nice and tender. Now you just want to put a lid on it and let it get all good and happy in there. And with the soup almost done, it's a perfect time to go ahead and add the butternut squash to the party in the oven. Slide that in there next to the baked potatoes. The squash is going to need to roast for about 35 minutes or so, or until it's nice and tender. And that looks and smells delicious. Last step to any soup is you want to take a little taste of it and test it for its seasonings. Very good. You may want to add just a touch more salt to it. It's going to depend on your taste. And then scoop it out, plate it up. One great thing to note about this soup is that it's delicious with beef stock, and it's also delicious with vegetable stock if you prefer a vegetarian option. And call in your sweetie. Oh, honey!
Yes?
Hey, it's soup time!
It smells so yummy.
There you go.
Yay.
Try some of that.
This looks delicious.
Very hot. Very hot. Tasty? Yay!
Man, this is such hot. Yummy.
Well, that soup was so yummy, and what a great way to start off the meal. Now it's time to think about those broccoli cheddar baked potatoes. So you're gonna start by making a bechamel sauce, but just a little tiny small batch. So you're gonna need about a half tablespoon of butter and about a half tablespoon of flour. And for fun, one very small chipotle pepper that has been sort of mashed up and pureed. So I'm gonna saute these together on low to medium-low heat for about 5 minutes. Well, that roux looks good and happy and right about the point where I want it. Indicators that you've got it at the right point are that it's gonna loosen up a little bit and become a bit more liquidy. And you'll also smell the smokiness of the peppers filling the air around you. Now at this point, you're gonna add about a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper and a few grates of nutmeg, or about 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Give that just a moment to know itself in with the roux. Take it off the heat for a moment. And add about a half cup of milk. Whisk the roux and the milk together, return it to the heat. At this point, you're gonna wanna bring it up to a boil and down to a simmer. Simmer it for 10 to 15 minutes. And while the bechamel does its thing, you can get started on the Jack Daniel's steak sauce. I have about 1.5 tablespoons of butter here, and I'm gonna melt that in a saute pan on medium-low heat. To that, I'm gonna add about a slice of an onion that I cut in half, so I have little half-moon shapes going on. You just wanna let the onions saute and brown a little bit in the butter for a bit of time to develop the flavor that's gonna complement the steak and the Jack Daniel's beautifully. I think that those onions are a beautiful color for the Jack Daniel's sauce. So let's go ahead and make some Jack Daniel's sauce here. We need about a 1/2 ounce of Jack Daniel's. Let it do its thing there for a second. Add about 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. It's hardened up a bit, so I'm gonna break it up in my fingers. And about 1/4 to 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. Maintain your temperature to medium-low and allow these beautiful ingredients to sort of caramelize together. And let's turn our attention back to the cheddar broccoli sauce. That's looking really fun in there. Absolutely beautiful. Now we're to the point where you'd want to add about 1/4 cup of grated cheddar cheese, or whatever sort of cheese you like. I like the color of the cheddar. I'm gonna take it off the heat here for a second and allow the cheese to gently melt. If it gets too hot, the cheese can break and create kind of an ugly result. Take it off the heat, the cheese cools the sauce, and the sauce melts the cheese, and they work beautifully together. At this point, you're also gonna wanna add your broccoli florets. I have about a head's worth of just the florets. Just the nice tender little tips, and I'm gonna add those in. Return it to the heat. We're gonna allow it to sit here and sort of simmer and cook the broccoli with the cheese. And with that, I'm gonna resume stirring here and keep my caramel sort of engaged. Almost done with dinner. Let's take another look at the cheddar broccoli sauce here. Jack Daniel's sauce is doing just fine. Woo! That looks happy up in there. Everything's good. The broccoli is softening. I'm just gonna give it a little taste here. Check my seasonings. Quite tasty. I am gonna add about 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt to really bring it out of its shell. And with that added, we're gonna call the sauce done. I'm actually gonna take it off the heat and set it off to the side. Do a little switcheroo here, put my Jack Daniel's sauce back there, and bring in my large skillet and prepare it for searing off the steaks. All right, let's start searing off some steaks here. We've got these beautiful flat iron steaks and they've soaked up their marinade. They're very happy now. Give them one last final flip before we send them on their journey. I've got a saute pan heated over here. I'm gonna add just a couple drops of olive oil to it. Go ahead and drop those steaks in there. Sear them on a nice medium-high heat for 3 to 5 minutes per side or until they are cooked to your liking. Those are looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and give them a flip. Mmm, yummy. That's gonna add just a touch more of the marinade to this. It's gonna help to make that sauce right when it's all done. A little shaky, shaky, make sure we're in full contact. And a little press down here. Another 3 to 5 minutes on those. So let's go get the potatoes and the squash out of the oven. Ooh, those smell and look amazing. Baked potatoes out of here. Whew, hot. Now it's just time to peel and plate these guys. Get the squash out of the roasting pan here. I like to give them a little toss, get them all loved up before I put them on the plate. These suckers are hot. Cut one nice clean incision down the center of the potato and squish the ends together to fluff it out. You want to make a nice little well for the cheddar broccoli sauce. And let's bring in that cheddar broccoli sauce over here. Just pour it generously into those potatoes. How delicious is that? Now down to the final step. Now this step is optional, but it's impressive. So take the sauce with the onions and the caramel and whatnot, pour it over the steaks, and add to it between 1/4 and 1/2 ounce of Jack Daniels and get your lighter ready. Come on. Jack Daniels is a little bit explosive, so stand back. Allow the fire to burn off, and these guys are ready to be plated. That last little flame helps to sear the flavors onto the steak and make it extra special delicious. Your sweetie's gonna be quite impressed. And there you go, an amazing steakhouse style dinner to share with your sweetie on your next romantic date night at home. I'd suggest pairing this with a red wine, perhaps a Cabernet Sauvignon, or perhaps a Chilean Malbec. Call in your sweetie. And bye-bye.
I smell dinner.
Yes, you do.
Wow, yummy steak dinner.
Little Jack Daniels sauce on it for you.
Yum.
Yeah. You're gonna like this one.
Absolutely delicious. Kitchen. Cooked perfect.
Awesome.
is such a hot kitchen. Yum.
Yay.
Hot kitchen.
So thanks for joining me in my hot kitchen tonight. Have fun turning up the heat in your kitchen, and I'll see you next week. Night night.